friends. We're into week 6 of Global Music Match. And we're joined by the very lovely duo Edgelarks, who consist of Philip Henry and Hannah. Hannah, what's your surname? That's awful. Hannah Martin, that's it. And you've recently, well, in the last couple of years, become Edgelarks as your sort of band name. Is that right? Albums
Yes, that is.
ago. Yeah. So 2 albums ago
Right.
was your album Edgelarks, and your
Yeah.
most recent album is called Feather. I just absolutely love your music, and I've just really been enjoying your most recent album. It's like very skillful, delicate. I think you said yourselves that you try and make as big a sound as you can with just the two of you. It sounded like you had quite an intimate approach to that. You put yourselves away in a cottage for a while to work on that album. Can you
I
tell us
very much.
about that?
Yeah, follow up to a studio album where we kind of threw everything at it, multi-tracking, and had some kind of electronic samples and this, that, and the other going on. We wanted to do something quite different with the follow-up album, and basically just capture the sound of the two of us sat in a room together playing. So we put out a message online asking our fans if there was anywhere we could kind of go away and work on the next album, and we got an offer of quite a few nice offers, but particularly the one in the Lake District was appealing. A very important place for me anyway. I spent a lot of time there as I was growing up, so we went to this cottage in a not so well known part of the Lake District. Kind of, they call it the Forgotten Valley, the Dudden Valley. Stayed in this cottage with views of Scarfell, and we basically sat down in front of each other with the instruments. I don't think we got any of the songs, had we, at that point? And said, right, we're going to do an album. So
Go. Yeah, but we were at that thing that I think is common to duos, where we try and make more sound than just two people should be able to. You're trying to fill out all the gaps all the time, aren't you? And with the previous album, we'd been in the studio and we'd had some wonderful musicians come and play with us, and so we had that great kind of full band sound. And then you go out on the road, and I'm sure that you're still sort of doing a good show for the audience, but for yourselves, you always hear the missing parts that you can't take with you. And so that was another reason why we wanted to just sit down together and play and see what just the two of us could do, and record it in that way that still allowed some room for improvisation and the kind of freedom that gives you as well. It's easy to fall into that thing of modern studio techniques and everything ends up being absolutely perfect. And then you go back and listen to classic albums from the 60s and 70s, and you're like, I heard a mistake,
they're
but the
full of
atmosphere
mistakes,
on this is so much better than the thing that
Yeah,
I just spent ages doing with all the click
yeah.
tracks and all that stuff. And so the way that we
yeah,
did
we
that
tried not to
Feather album was,
polish it too much, did we not, with that
no,
one?
kind of gather around a couple of microphones, really nice gear. We worked in a great studio, didn't we? But yeah, we'd play it almost live. We did the vocals separately, but it still had that kind of
You're not
ebb and
supposed to
flow.
tell them that. They're supposed to be.
Yeah, well, to be honest, for us, we did the same except 2 tracks, I think. No, three or 4 tracks. Especially if you want to be making your instrument up nicely and making your vocal up nicely, it's just not going to work, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Especially for
So,
that.
people, we're not cheating, okay?
Supposed to be an auto tune on the vocals as well. But, I mean,
It does feel like a really intimate album, but also just really well produced. Did you produce the album yourselves, the most recent one?
we didn't know. We did demo recordings in the cottage, but then we tried to kind of recreate the same atmosphere in the studio that we had in the cottage, the same kind of facing each other with the mics and stuff. But we worked with a guy called Mark Tucker who's produced quite a few of our albums, but he's got a lovely studio not far from here in Devon. He's kind of got that vibe going in his studio anyway. It's not one of these kind of fancy studios where it's all shiny, kind of all whistles and bells. It actually feels like a bit like a cottage in there.
Yeah, it's in the,
He keeps it low light. There's a wood burning stove going, and it's
Oh,
got the vibe anyway. So
yeah.
kind of recreated that, and he put extremely expensive microphones and preamps into the equation, and
Cool.
I love it when it's like a really like chilled environment, quite rustic, and then the mics probably cost more than like the whole thing, everything else in the room.
More than your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the whole making an album process, getting the atmosphere really right in the studio, really makes an album. It's almost as important as the notes themselves. The silence around the notes and like the vibrations around the notes really facilitate the feel of the album, don't they? It's
yeah,
amazing.
a very important part of the recording is the sound of the room in the background, isn't it? That kind of vibe, just it makes it sound real rather than like it's been plucked out of space and put there on the CD. It should sound like it was recorded in a room by real people playing real instruments.
Yeah.
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 Something on that Feather album you'll notice if you listen carefully. There's quite a good aeroplane goes over, and there's birds and stuff getting involved as well in the background, which all just adds, I think,
Yeah.
depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your album Feather is about hope, as Esther mentioned, and I was just wondering what led you to explore that theme.
I think folk music can have a tendency to be quite miserable, and also, you know, singer-songwriters can be a little bit navel-gazing and that kind of vibe. And I just felt like it was time to try and do something a bit different. And I actually went out with the ambition of writing a set of happy songs, and that turned out to be far too much for my inner folky. Before we went to the cottage, I tend to like habitually collect stories that I think I might write songs about, and so I had a good selection of them, and I kind of almost retrospectively picked out, oh, I think the theme here is more hope than anything else. So that's how it.
That's awesome. Sometimes it's just not as straightforward as that, is it? It's like that life is too complicated just to write happy songs.
Yeah,
It can be hopeful and optimistic sounding, but just happy. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's not got so much depth, has it?
Yeah.
But your album's also about being where you are and appreciating sitting with that. And you sort of used a few beautiful metaphors with nature and how like we keep fighting in natural patterns.
I suppose, in a way, in retrospect, I could think of quite a lot of those songs as kind of notes to self, you know, like things that I think are important, but I wish I could sort of remember for myself more often, if you see what I mean. That sense of like wonder at the natural world, and that sense of having enough, you know, rather than getting caught up in the endless cycles of the modern world, just being like, it's fine because I'm here and I've got a nice meal and I'm warm enough, and that's actually a huge blessing.
That's nice.
Well, it's a great sentiment, but I can't say I'm particularly good at living by it. So I've written the songs to kind of remind myself.
So you guys have just finished recording a new album. So do you want to tell us a bit about this album? Presumably it's a lockdown album.
It certainly is, yeah. So it's the first album we've ever made that's entirely traditional songs. When we went into lockdown, I think both of us felt quite like a sense of identity crisis almost, because we were meant to be touring, and we've been touring for 12 years nearly together now, and it kind of just felt like this huge gaping chasm of, oh my goodness, you know, who are we if we're not playing gigs? And so I have this collection of traditional songbooks, and I dip into them sometimes, and so I properly sat down, and actually there's a song that was collected on Dartmoor, which is near where we live, called Henry Martin, and for years at folk clubs people have joked to me, oh well, you must do that song, you know, because it's our names. And so I thought, well, I'll sit down and I'll try and work out an arrangement, and so I'd done that. And then Phil is really the creative genius behind the whole project, because I had this like group of songs, but Phil really did all the production and the musical direction, didn't you? And
To a certain extent, but I wouldn't have done any of it if you hadn't brought those songs to me. And you had sketched out kind of rough ideas for arrangements as well. But yeah, I've spent the last 6 months tweaking those basically. Yeah, we recorded it in the second bedroom, which is affectionately known as the Brazil room, because it was covered in pictures of Rio de Janeiro when we moved into this house a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I've never recorded and mixed a full album before, so I've learnt a lot. Happy with it.
You've done a great job.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear it. We read that you guys have lots of different influences and that, Phil, you spent some time studying in India.
That's right.
Totally fascinated to hear about this. I did not know that there were slide guitar teachers in India.
A band of Hawaiian musicians travelled through India in the 40s. Hawaiian music, like slide lap steel, used to be extremely popular all around the world. So they travelled through India, and the Indian musicians took a shine to that instrument and incorporated it into the Indian classical tradition. The guy that I studied with is the student of the original Indian slide guitarist, Brij Bhushan Lal Kabra. And the guy I studied with is called Pandit Debashish Bhattacharya, and he was one of his disciples. So I've kind of learnt from the original source of Indian slide guitar, and also he's the best slide guitarist probably that will ever walk the earth. He's absolutely superhuman. And I went there in 2008 with some funding from the Arts Council to study specifically raga music on the slide guitar, and I came back with one of his instruments that he designed called a Chaturagui as well.
So do you use the Chaturagui in your duo at all?
Yeah, we do. It's not on every song. We didn't use it on Feather. I use it on one album and then give it a rest for one, and then use it on the next one generally. It's hard work to get it to sound right in a live situation.
It is such a distinctive sound, and it's that fine line with influences where you want the influence but you don't want to be doing cultural appropriation. So it's a kind of very specific sound. So
It appears on the new album.
Cool.
Amazing.
Your sound, it obviously takes influence from, lots of different places around the world, but it's still you guys. It sounds original to you, and it's sort of true to your tradition and your own style as a duo.
Definitely something we've thought about a lot, isn't it? It's a interesting thing.
I think so. But we just play, and that's what comes out really. But
you're doing what the Indian folk did with the slide guitar, bringing it into their music, and you're bringing Indian music into your music in a really organic way. I love that.
Thank you.
We've spent a bit of time doing this world music project, Roots to Roots, and it's something we've thought about quite a lot as well. We don't want to use tokenism with very, very different cultures that we met within each community, even, let alone each country. So it's so important.
It is, but it's kind of like music by its nature doesn't have borders. So you don't want to get into the territory of saying, oh no, you can't sing that song because you're not, blah, blah, blah. it's you don't want to create more boundaries, do you? So I think it's an interesting conversation, and I guess it's about remaining authentic and not stopping listening to other people, so that you kind of get the balance right. I hope. I don't know. I think it's hard.
But I think engaging in it and thinking about it is really all we can do, isn't it? And,
exactly. And then just do what's true to, to be really aware, and then just do, as I say, what comes out and what feels natural.
Such a joy to get to know your music and learn about you guys. I can't wait to hear you live. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, likewise. Yeah, we've got to get together when this is all over and have a drink.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God,
absolutely.
that'd be so lovely.
Yeah.
And also play together in person. I'm really excited to do our collab.
Yeah. It's going to be so cool.
Stay tuned, people. We've got a special treat.
We're not going to reveal the song name yet, but a good one.
Bye.
Bye.